Hello everyone, and today will be a tutorial on how to produce this shot using LED lights and editing in Lightroom, and this will be shot using the GFX100. I'm Richard and welcome to ZP Productions, and today we'll talk about how did I produce this particular shot here. Now, there are a few elements to it. Some of them are actually the lighting itself. The other is about understanding your camera, and lastly is about using Lightroom to edit the shots. Firstly, the camera itself is a GFX100. I'm using the GF80mm or the GF63mm in this particular shoot itself. You've seen one photo, let me show you a few more, and pretty much it has been shot with either of these lenses. Now, in terms of lighting wise, I have used 3 different lights in this particular shot, or should I say this particular shoot. So firstly, there is the aperture 60D, there is the non-light Forza 60B, and then there is the aperture 300x. The lights are measured with a light meter. This is the Sekonic L858 if I'm not wrong. And I'm using this to measure the lights. Now, why did I measure lights? Because I want to set up the scene a lot quicker. And if you do not know what a light meter is for and why is it good, take a look at this video up in the link here. Now, I measure the lights and then I set the appropriate settings. So now the setting wise is I want the headlight to be bright. I want the face to be a more dramatic look. So it has to be about 3 to 4 stops difference from the headlight. But I want to ensure that my camera can recover so that if I want to make it brighter or darker, I get a little bit of leg room to wiggle around. So understanding your camera is very important. Firstly, a GFX100 has about 2 stops of headroom for highlights, which means that if I shoot more than 2 stops brighter, there is a chance I lose all details. So that's something that I learned over multiple shoots and testing with the GFX100. Then in terms of the shadow recovery wise, the GFX100 has a lot of shadow recovery. You don't need to worry about it. It has about 5-6 stops of shadow recovery. For this particular shot, as I said earlier, I want to have about 3 to 4 stops of difference between the highlights and the shadow, which is the face, so that I can get a more dramatic look, and then from there I can edit to whatever I want. So understanding your camera first, knowing that I got about 2 stops of headroom. My aperture that I'm aiming for is f5.6 so that I get 2 eyes sharp in the frame, and then some slight blurring in the back of the end of the headroom so that it looks a bit of a magical effect, if you ask me. Depends on which lens you use, but I'm aiming for f5.6 so that ensure that both eyes are sharp. So for this particular shot here, I know that I got f5.6, I got 2 stops of headroom, so I'm aiming for my highlight to be about f11, f10, and that is how I actually measured f11, f10 for the highlight, which is using the aperture 60D in a spot mode on the subject's head. So that is my first light. Now the other 2 light, which is the front top light, so that I get a light that is coming from the top, and a bottom fill light, which is the aperture 300x Forza 60B. Now both of these lights are firstly set at 6500K. Both of these are bicolor lights, and they are 6500K so that my top light have a slightly warm look to it. That will be actually more apparent in post-processing later in Lightroom. And then for the light power wise, as I said, I want the fill light to be about f3.2, 3.5, f4. So there is about 3 to 4 stops difference between the shadow region and the highlights on the head. And I measured accordingly. So in this case, my Forza 60B is measured to about, or should I say the top light from this side, if you can see in the photo, is measured to about f3.2, and the fill light is also measured to about f3, if I'm not wrong. Slightly below f3.2 or f2.8, I remember. Add together, they are about 3.5 in terms of the measurement itself. Now, this will give you this particular dark looking shot, which is okay, which is actually what I want, where I have the highlight that is about, if I'm not wrong, 3.5 stops different from the shadow itself, which is the face and whatever region. And the fill light is there to ensure that there is no total black region in this particular shot itself. Except for maybe under the chin, which is okay because the f2.8 light will fill in some of the chin area here and it'll become like f2, f1.4. Still dark, but still usable. Okay, pretty much this is the setup for the lighting itself. You can see in the particular shot, the modifiers is the softbox, a very big 1.2 meter softbox on the floor. That's a fill light. And then there is a softbox on the top right hand in the photo. And that is for the purpose of the key light on the subject's face so that you have a light from top down feel. Now, with all this in mind, let's talk about the post-processing now. As I said earlier, the reason why I want to ensure that my highlights are not more than 2 stops over the setting in the camera itself is to ensure that I got details, and you can see the details when I zoom in on the unprocessed photos. You can see all the details of the hair, nothing is blown out. If I want to retain the gray of the hair, I can actually pull down easily. So from there, this is a starting point. Firstly, let me show you what happened if I was to raise about 2 stops of exposure. You can see the photos is about properly exposed. As I said, the measured is about f3.2, 3.5, and then the shot is f5.6, which is 1.5 stops difference. Now, the GFX camera or on general Fujifilm camera is slightly darker than the red itself, so this is about correct. Now, some of the major highlights to the editing I will talk about in this particular Lightroom part. I'm not going to go through every single setting. I'll just highlight the key things that you should understand for this particular shot to get the same effect. Firstly, I choose the correct camera profile. I wanted this very soft, decontrasty look. So I use Eterna for the Fujifilm cameras. You can also use Adobe Neutral for it, which is about the same. And then, of course, raise the exposure by 1.5 stop. Even though I raised the exposure because I captured the details, there will still be details on the hair itself. And if I want to get more details back, I can easily pull the highlights down, which you can see in this particular setting. I'm pulling the highlights down too. And then I'll raise the shadow slightly more so that there is no totally dark regions. And of course, the face itself is now slightly brighter. Now you can see the shot is taking place really nicely. I want this very slightly soft look, so I will actually add a little bit of dehaze too. Now in terms of every other setting like clarity, texture, or even black and white, is up to your preference. For me, I can show you the settings here. You can see there's no issue. Now, the other thing that is important for this particular shot in terms of the right bar settings is all the way at the below for color calibration, because I want this slightly washed out look for the person's skin. So I'm going to push the red to -25 for this particular shot. Now, you may be wondering, why am I doing the color correction here? This camera color calibration is actually how the Lightroom interprets your raw files, and editing the colors here will give you the most natural feel to the shot itself. And for this particular shot, there is no other red elements in the scene other than the skin tones and maybe the slightly golden crown. So by shifting the red around, what will happen is that it will give you this very natural, more, I would say as grayish, yellowish skin that you get out of the shot, rather than if you go to just desaturation, you just look gray. So this is one way I usually utilize to get this very natural look. Okay, and that's about the right bar setting. So there's one more thing. If you notice, the photo is now very close. The only other thing now is the glow on the head and some highlights on the face and stuff. And that is all done with radial filters. So I'm going to use the radial filter. Firstly, I want to get that glow from the top. As you noticed earlier in my shot, there was no light on the background. As I said, I put the model about 1.5 meter in front of me. So there is no light on the background highlighting the back. So I'm going to add this in post-process by adding a light at the top. It's out of the frame. I drag the radial filter until it goes into the frame and lights the top of the head and the crown. Now, that is the first part. And then the next thing is I'm going to light the face and the body to however brightness I want, doing spot radial filters here and there. Now, this is, if I ask me, one of the better ways to do it. So the shot on the camera screen itself isn't very, I'll say it's close to the end, but if you know roughly what you want to obtain with it, shooting within your camera limits is one way to obtain it. And in this particular shot, you can see me transforming the shot from raw all the way to edited. And really, that is about it for today's tutorial. I hope you learned something out of it. Now, there are many ways to do a shot. Some people are more perfectionist in nature and they will want the shot to be exact on the back screen. That is possible, but in this particular shot itself, if you do it, you have to be really careful with the highlights, and you probably have to wiggle around with the key light and the fill light a lot more, and then you probably need one more light for the backdrop itself so that you can get that particular feel in the same shot. If you do not have it, like me, you only have 3 lights and I have a very small space. I mean, this is not a studio, this is actually my home. It's a very small space. I will take the post-processing route to actually get there. But before that, you really need to understand your camera to know how much you can push it to get to the end point. And that's about it for today. If you want to know more about my post-processing in Photoshop, do leave a comment below. Maybe I'll do one video then. But till the next time, bye-bye.